Do you feel like you can't stop eating after meals? If so, definitely take a listen to this. And look, I know what you're thinking already. It's going to be the same old advice, but I promise you, if you stick around till the end, you're going to find out some things that you didn't know before. And before we dive into things, be sure you like this video, comment below with any thoughts or reflections. I'd love to hear from you, and subscribe to the channel so that you can get first access to notifications when I post a new video. You definitely want to take a listen to this. Hey there, my name is Catherine. I am an anti-diet dietitian and certified intuitive eating practitioner, and I am so excited to dive into the topic that I've got planned for you today. So how many times have you had a full meal and felt like you should be full and you shouldn't be hungry afterwards, only to find yourself continuing to search for food, continuing to eat beyond your fullness, or maybe to the point of discomfort, and you wonder, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stop eating? Why am I not satisfied enough from the food that I ate? And this is what we're going to dive into right now. So there are 4 different reasons why you might be finding yourself not able to stop eating after you've had a full meal. And we're gonna dive into each one of those in more detail, and I wanna name them up front. So the 4 reasons are: number 1, you are not eating enough energy-dense foods at your meal. The second reason is that you are working towards filling your hunger tank, but not your appetite tank. The third reason is that you're restricting your food intake in thought or in action. And the fourth reason is that you haven't had enough food throughout the day. All right, let's talk about reason number 1. You are not having enough energy-dense foods at your meal. It is a really common experience to be told or to follow the advice to fill up on fruits and vegetables, which tend to be really voluminous. And what I'm not saying is that there isn't a place for them in your diet and in your intake, but that when we fill up on voluminous foods, it gives us a sensation that we are full, but it's not actually providing your body, with the energy that it needs. So when I talk about having enough energy-dense foods, we're talking about the 3 macronutrient groups: protein, fat, and carbohydrates, and making sure that we're getting enough of those. It is a common misconception that you can trick the body into thinking that it's full and satisfied by filling up on voluminous foods. But what usually happens is, after you have those more voluminous foods, an hour or 2 passes by and you find yourself wanting more food, rightfully so, because your body hasn't gotten its energy needs met. So by focusing on including enough and consistently adding energy-dense foods, this can most certainly help you feel a greater sense of satisfaction after your meal and decrease the pull or desire to want to continue eating afterwards. Reason number 2 is that you are working towards filling up your hunger tank and you're not addressing and thinking about your appetite tank. So what does this mean? What do I mean by that? This is a way that I offer conceptually thinking about your needs at a meal. So in this culture, there's often a focus and emphasis on filling your hunger tank, which is meeting your physiological needs, your body's needs to have food, to feel full, right? And we want that to be happening. But oftentimes we're not thinking about the other tank that exists, which is your appetite tank. And what is included in your appetite tank? These are things like taste, texture, temperature, presentation, all of the things that you want, things that bring you joy in the meal itself. So it's not just about filling your belly and meeting your hunger needs. It's also about thinking about, what are my appetite needs in this meal? Am I missing something that would bring me more joy or pleasure in this meal? And a really common experience, especially when you've dieted for a long time or even just existing in this dieting culture, is that you will over-focus on meeting your hunger needs, but not necessarily be thinking about your appetite needs. And part of that is because there's often an encouragement to fill up on foods and eat all kinds of foods that you may not like, or definitely may not like over time. And there's not a focus on or opportunity to talk about and add in the kinds of foods that you actually enjoy and that you actually want. So a way that you can practice this is when you are preparing meals, when you're going out to buy food, is to think about the kinds of things that you want to add in. Do you like warm or cold textures or temperatures? Is there a certain kind of presentation that you want? Think about these things ahead of time and when you're preparing your meal, so that you're not just addressing your hunger needs, you're also addressing your appetite needs, which can help you decrease the amount of continuous eating that happens afterwards because you've addressed your desires and not just your hunger needs. Reason number 3 is that you are restricting in thought or in action your food intake, which is leading to you eating well beyond your fullness and continuously eating after your meals. So the way that I distinguish between restricting food in thought and restricting food in action is that the action part is that you're choosing not to bring certain foods into your house, you're choosing not to eat certain foods, versus restricting in food thoughts is you're having the food, but you're having thoughts about, I shouldn't be eating this, I should be eating less, I am going to stop eating this tomorrow, right? It's mostly focused on the thoughts about it, but you could still be eating the food. The curious thing about this is that both the action of restriction and the thought have the same impact on your experience. It is a threat to your brain and body. It thinks, we're not going to be able to get access to this food again, so we need to make sure that we get enough of it right now. This is often not a conscious thought, but rather something that's happening subconsciously. So the way that we can and you can decrease the continuous eating after meals is by working on incorporating all foods, not having restrictions either in action or in thought. And I know that that's easier said than done, and I will most certainly address that in future videos, but this is often an important part of thinking about why it's really difficult to stop eating after your meals. If you're feeling restricted, if your brain and body is feeling threatened, it's going to do what it can and what it needs to do in order to assure that it gets enough in that moment. And that often looks like eating well beyond what we would like or what we had intended to, because the brain and body feels threatened. Reason number 4 is that you haven't eaten enough food during the day. Sometimes this happens because you're feeling stress and anxiety, or because you're busy and you just don't have time. Other times it's because you had a history of dieting, or you're actively participating in some kind of food restriction. And this leads to you not eating enough during the day. So what happens? You get home, you have your meal, you feel pretty full, but you don't feel satisfied. You are still thinking about food, you find you want more food, and you feel like you just can't stop eating. And so much of this is driven by your body's need for energy. Again, you cannot trick your body into thinking that it will need less food. And so if you haven't had enough during the day, you are most certainly going to find yourself continuously eating after your meal in the evening and not really feeling a sense of satisfaction, even if physically you are feeling full. So one of the ways that you can address this in order to decrease the continuous eating that you might be experiencing after your meals is making sure that you have enough food during the day consistently and rhythmically, so that you're not getting to the end of your day and your body is like, oh my goodness, we need more energy now. So in summary, it can be helpful to think about, practice, examine these 4 areas that I've laid out for you that often contribute to a felt sense of not feeling like you can stop eating after you have a meal. What is most important to note is that none of this, the continuous eating after meals, it's not because you lack control, which is a really common rhetoric that's out there. And it's also not because you're doing anything wrong. These things are often taught by diets, by diet culture. And so it takes time to unpack and to examine the ways that those 4 ways that I've laid out are impacting your eating experience. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below, share with others, and I will see you back here soon.